One of my favorite accessibility stories in the video game industry was when The Outer Worlds by Obsidian came out. There was some complaints about text size. I was definitely one to complain about it myself. So a developer actually took the time to be able to add a text slider into the game, and after a few months of bug fixes and UI updates, they were able to release that option in the first official patch for the game post-launch. I was reminded of that story once I opened up The Outer Worlds to kind of see where Obsidian started when it comes to accessibility. Now that Avowed, their next big RPG, is just about to come out, I wanted to see, did they move forward with accessibility and continue that journey with Avowed? Or did they stutter at the starting line and not really update much at all? Let's find out. Hi, I'm Steve Saylor, I'm blind, and if you're wondering how I can be able to play video games if I'm blind, if you take a look at the video here, or link in the description down below, you'll be able to see exactly what I see when I'm playing video games. I'm not in my current setup, I'm actually in Las Vegas right now for the DICE Summit, so forgive me in this sort of makeshift sort of setup in my hotel room, but today I'm here to basically talk about Avowed and its accessibility. So yeah, and thanks to Xbox Canada and Obsidian for sending me a code to be able to check out this game. Also, I don't have my script sort of like as a prompter, so I'm going to be reading off my iPad, so I hope that's okay, but I wanted to at least be able to get some of my thoughts out after I wrote them down. So forgive me if I'm having to look at my iPad a lot in order to be able to look back at my notes. So hopefully that's okay. The highly anticipated new fantasy RPG by a famed RPG house, Obsidian, is finally out, and I can positively say that Avowed has not stuttered at the starting gate, and actually, when it comes to accessibility, they actually did move forward pretty fast. While it isn't as fully accessible as Xbox's sort of gaming is for everyone program or a banner, it is an amazing growth for the studio. You can really see the progression from Outer Worlds to Grounded to Pentiment and now to Avowed. While it's missing some key accessibility features, and especially it won't be able to do super well across all the disability spectrum, which sadly, once again, blind players will have difficulty playing this game. I wanted to be able to get out front and say that. Overall, I think the game, it does have some quality of life features that not only do I think should be included as like in every accessibility aspect when it comes to a fantasy RPG, but also just RPGs in general going forward beyond accessibility. But let me get into some sort of general thoughts about the game. I don't know what it is. I've been jonesing for more RPG games as of late. After really playing like games like Star Wars Outlaws and Dragon Age the Veilguard, there's been an itch that I need to scratch when it comes to RPGs, and Avowed kind of hit at that right time. Now, Avowed is set in the Pillars of Eternity universe. Now, you don't necessarily need to know a lot about the lore of that game, but the game does a pretty good job of catching you up to speed, but also there's some cool accessibility features that does help with that. And I'll get to that in a minute. The story takes you to the Living Lands, a lush land that is constant battle with nature versus progress, as nature is constantly fighting back in a ton of ways, and some of which are deadly. You play as a godlike envoy sent by Emperor of Adira to the Living Lands to investigate this plague called the Dream Scourge that is growing rapidly in the Living Lands, that, like fungus, infects all living things, including people. If you think it has a similar vibe to The Last of Us, sure, it's got some similarities, so think of this game as if The Last of Us is set in a sword-wielding, magic-casting fantasy world, and you get the idea. Along the way, you're going to meet folks who become your companions, as often RPGs do, as you investigate the Dream Scourge, as you're being pulled also into different directions, both political, spiritual, and humanitarian, as you're trying to figure out how to deal with the Dream Scourge. I'm liking this game, honestly, a lot. I'm also taking my time with it. Right now, I've done pretty much a lot of the side quests and the main quest in the first area open zone that you currently go into after you're at the tutorial. And I'm about 15 hours in, and I only just got into the second open zone area. So that's to kind of say there's a lot here. There's a lot of meat on this bone when it comes to Avowed. So if you're looking for a really massive sort of RPG to tap your, or sink your teeth into, this game is definitely it. So far, the quests are pretty simple RPG type quests. You know, fetch a thing, investigate a thing, go beat up a thing, or beat up other people, or negotiate with pirates and smugglers as you go throughout the world. The story so far is interesting, and it does keep me going. And the companions I found, aren't necessarily growing on me as other RPGs have in the past, including in previous Obsidian games, but I do like them overall. Overall, I do like this game quite a bit, and I want to keep playing all the way through to the end. Whether I will continue my journey of going through a lot of the side quests, I don't know. I may just sort of at some point streamline the golden path of the game, but we'll see how that goes as I play this in the future. Now that I talked about the game as a whole, let's talk about the accessibility. I think that this game does two things really well. And I think that's going to help specific people with disabilities that I actually haven't really been touched on a lot in a lot of RPG type games. There's two aspects that I think Obsidian did really well. One is for motion sickness, and two is for cognitively disabled players. First, let's talk about the motion sickness. Because this is a first-person based game, and they do want to be able to include you in the immersion of this POV of your character, there is obviously some motion sickness accessibility that needs to accommodate for those who potentially might have issues with these type of games. Options like field of view adjustments, center dot, camera shake, and motion blur. But in Avowed, they also have added the ability to turn off the more immersive camera effects that can come when your character moves, climbs, or reacts to the environment around them, which I honestly think it's great. On top of that, while yes, it has been talked about from the developers that there is a third-person mode, I think that it is worth shouting out for accessibility, because you can be able to adjust, you can be able to turn on or off third-person mode at any given time, and that actually is a great accessibility option for those who have motion sickness. So with all those options combined, you should be able to customize your experience to make it a lot more comfortable for you to be able to play. I honestly think that having a third-person view mode in a game like that is mostly first-person heavy is actually a really neat feature. Speaking of neat features, there is actually a really cool feature on YouTube where if you subscribe to a channel, it'll help that channel grow. So why don't you hit the subscribe button on my channel to help my channel grow? That's stupid. Funny joke, whatever. Another great highlight of the game's accessibility is for those with cognitive disabilities. With a large RPG, heavy lore setting game, a lot of the lore and the world and everything about it can get lost, especially for those who have trouble trying to be able to remember what is actually happening in the game, has potentially memory loss, or has potential memory problems, or just have trouble trying to be able to focus on the world and lore as you progress through the game. Avowed actually does something really, really interesting. Now, of course, a lot of RPGs, they have sort of lore books that you can go into the settings and kind of read all the sort of the fun additions to the world. Kind of like we're looking through the history books of Pillars of Eternity, as it were. And yes, the game does offer those settings. But there's a really cool thing that happens when you are talking to any NPC. You might notice that in the subtitles, there are words that are highlighted in blue. Now, sorry, unfortunately for colorblind folks, there is only filters to be able to help you out, so unfortunately you can't adjust the color of these. But back to what I was talking about. So there are words that are highlighted in blue, and that anytime you're in a dialogue conversation with an NPC, you can be able to hold down X, or whatever button that would be on the PC, and you can be able to not only bring up a history of a dialogue chat that you just had, so if you need to be like, wait, what was that person said? You can go and reread what was said, but also, any of those words that are highlighted in blue will come up with a little tiny lore paragraph of that word. So if you are confused, okay, what is a god like? You can that word will be highlighted in blue, and you'll read a little blurb about what that is right within the dialogue history chat window that's there. So you don't have to go through and search through all the lore books that are in your settings in order to be able to remember what is a god like. This is not only great for cognitive accessibility, but this is actually great for just RPGs in general, because when has there been a time that basically you would try to be able to go back to a game like this and you forget everything that you about the game, about the lore, about the world, and you're like, oh wait, shoot, what is the Emperor? Who is the Emperor? Who is the Steel Garrote, which is a faction in the game? What is that again? Well, you can be able to hit X, and you'll be able to pull up the steel garrote whenever someone brings that up, and you can see the little blurb about that. And I think that is something that RPGs should have in general, beyond just the fact that this is a great accessibility feature. As for other highlights, the game does have some quality of life accessibility updates that literally just make sense. One that I found really useful is whenever there is an item you can pick up, whether it's from a body, a box, a treasure chest, there is a nice constant shimmering directional sound effect that plays, letting you know that there is something nearby within about 10 to 20 meters of where your location. There is much better UI design in this game than compared to Outer Worlds. Outer Worlds, when it was designed around the text size that it had, there was a lot of bugs that came up when they tried to fix it to add a text slider. Well, the good thing is that there is a text slider in this game, and the UI accommodates for the larger text size. My eyes, thank you, Obsidian. Unfortunately, like I said, there are some key areas of disability spectrum that the Obsidian did miss when making this game. For deaf and hard of hearing players, there are subtitle options and visual indicators of attacks happening off screen, but sadly it is missing any full captions or full environmental dialogue in the subtitles. There is the ability for motor disabled players to remap controls, setting buttons from toggles to holds, adjust sensitivity of the cameras, but the game does rely on precise timing with dodges and parries, which there are abilities you can unlock that can slow down time a bit when you do a perfect dodge or parry, but you have to get to that point where you can unlock it, and that is a big problem. Also, sadly for totally blind players, there is no screen reader for this very text-heavy game. I wish it did. Considering they had a great screen reader for Pentiment, it was sad to see that they did not want to include that or had the capability of including that in this game, because there is a lot of text in this. And I could see definitely a technical challenge with adding a screen reader, but I also think that it should have had this in the game, and I'm sad that it's not there. Also, there's no navigational assistance to get you to your next objective point or point you where you need to go in the map or HUD, unless you can see the larger icons or the larger HUD, which you can adjust in the settings. Unfortunately, if you're a totally blind player, that doesn't really help you at all. There is aim assist that you can enable in the settings, which does help a lot in combat. It does a thing where if you aim down sights, it will automatically lock onto the closest target, but also when you're using your wand and you're basically just shooting it like spells at them, basically there's no problems. It will just hit whoever you're closest to. Again, it's nice for low vision folks, but unfortunately for totally blind players, it doesn't really do the trick if you can't basically know where to go and you have no idea what anything is happening within the game itself. Granted, all dialogue is voice acted, but your dialogue isn't, and you don't know what to be able to choose, and because you have to choose dialogue options in this game, unfortunately, you have no idea what they are unless you have sighted assistance. And because there's no co-op, unfortunately, they can't play with you, so you will need to have someone sitting beside you as you play if you're a totally blind player, which is unfortunate, and I hate it, and it sucks. Overall, I think Avowed is the next step in the accessibility journey that Obsidian is going on. Sure, yes, they are missing a lot in some key areas, but you gotta remember, from going back to the Outer Worlds to what it had to what Avowed has now, there is a journey happening there. So while, yes, Avowed may not be the accessible game that I think that it would be great for all disabled players, I would definitely keep an eye on Obsidian in the future, because whether it's going to be updates to this game going forward or any future projects that Obsidian creates, there is going to be more accessibility added. I can only hope and hopefully that Obsidian will continue this journey moving forward. So I give Avowed for accessibility a 3 out of 5. Thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. I hope you're okay with this sort of weird sort of setup today. I'm also reading from my iPad a lot of my notes, but I hope that's all right. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you want to be able to subscribe to this channel to see more of my reviews and previews, and also my podcast, Gaming Insight Daily, make sure to subscribe to this channel for more of that. Also, if you have any questions about anything I didn't really cover in the game, I will try to answer them in the comments down below. Please let me know. I can only cover so much in a little bit of time, so I know there's probably some stuff that is missing that I may not have covered. So please ask in the comments, and I'll try to answer as best as I can. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you have a good one. I'll see you in the next video. And as always, I remain obediently yours. Bye-bye.